Hi, everybody. I'm Adriana Hopkins with 7 News DC, coming to you from the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. Monday at 7 p.m., join the independent film series in a discussion on true justice, Brian Stevenson's Fight for Equality. This month's guest speaker is Sophia McDonald, a staff attorney for the Equal Justice Initiative. Join Bladensburg Branch Library staff at the Starbucks in Landover Hills for Crocheting and Conversation Tuesday at 11 a.m. Learn to code or practice your skills with Ozobots. Write a color-coded pop star performance at this special Teentober event at the Fairmount Heights Branch Library Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Wednesday at 7 p.m., PGC MLS and the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights are presenting a discussion with filmmaker, curator, and creator Chris Haley. Haley will be discussing his film Unmarked, which explores the burial sites of enslaved African Americans throughout the South. Watch Unmarked in advance of the event for free on Canopy with your library card. Also, on Wednesday at 7 p.m., come ready to share your poetry or just enjoy experiencing this special edition of PGC MLS's Open Mic. The Open Mic's theme is Delights. It will feature poet, author, and teacher C. Thomas. On Teen Voices, Thursday at 4 p.m., PGC MLS staff speak with Finn Holland, a Prince George's County teenager who's made a difference with anti-trafficking activism. Learn all about how one person can have a meaningful impact on their community. It is spooky season and scary stories are just waiting to be told. On Thursday at 4 p.m., kids ages 5 to 8 are invited to the Spalding's Branch Library to hear some classic scary stories being read aloud, play games, and participate in fun activities. Thursday at 5 p.m., attend this virtual event with Sonia Renee Taylor, the founder and radical executive officer of The Body Is Not an Apology. The Body Is Not an Apology is a digital media and education company promoting radical self-love and body empowerment as a foundational tool for social justice and global transformation. Prepare your kids for the Autumn Spooktacular at the Akahik Branch this Saturday at 2 p.m. At this special spooky event, you can dress up, play games, and paint some beautiful mini pumpkins. This event is geared for ages 8 to 12, but all ages are welcome. Thanks for watching. Have a happy Halloween, and we'll see you back here next week.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Prince George's County Memorial Library System and Office of Human Rights. Almost daily gathering spot, watering hole without the drinks. Thank you for being here with us. My name is Nick. I'm the CEO for Communication and Outreach. And on your screen are Michelle Hamiel and Kyla Hanington, who I'm sure you all know already, which is great. And if you don't know them, they're fabulous, and you'll hear more about them. Michelle is my colleague at the library, COO for Public Services, and she runs all of our 19 branches plus the Credit Center Library and all kinds of other stuff too. And Kyla Hanington is, can you share the title? What is your current title, Kyla?
I don't have it on top of my head.
Public Information Officer.
Yeah.
Kyla's the guru.
There we go. Public Outreach and Engagement Division Manager.
Woo!
Wow.
Very exciting.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, I had to look it up.
I think my title has like 8 words. It's a bit long. Yeah. But anyways, we are here today for the final installment of The Elephant We Don't See, a diversity dialogue in calendar year 21. It was still 21. FY22, calendar 21. And this has been a really rewarding second season of this series, which started in the early days of the pandemic, and we're still in the pandemic. But hey, how about those Pfizer booster vaccines for little kids getting approved today? That was pretty exciting. So this is a really special discussion. Our colleagues here will be talking about a really cool memoir called We Have Always Been Here by Samra Habib. One of the reasons why we wanted to look at this book was because this month is LGBTQ History Month. But aside from that, it's an opportunity for us to center Middle Eastern story and crossover with Canada, which is near and dear to our dual citizen Canada America citizen. Clearly we're at the end of season 2, you can tell. But this should be a really rewarding discussion. This book is really special. For anyone who hasn't encountered it yet, it's available through the library, of course, and through Loyalty Bookstores. And one of the cool things with this book, if you listen to it on audio, it is actually read by the author herself. So I encourage everyone to check it out. I'm sure this is going to be a really cool conversation. Shout out to Miss Vivian for sticking with us for 2 full seasons. She gets the Golden Chair Award. And I will be opining in the chat. So say hi on there, and we'll turn it over to Kyla and Michelle. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Nick.
Good evening, everyone, and we are glad you stuck with us through this season. And Nick is right. This is an amazing story. This is a story of I'm going to say it's a memoir, and she starts at her childhood, and I think it was age 4. But this is a young woman who has suffered trauma in so many ways. Her family was always up against, because of their religion and belief, up against Islamic extremists. She was traumatized and abused as a child, not by her family, and sexually abused as a young child. And then moving to Canada to escape everything they were facing in Pakistan. And everything that she had faced, the trauma that she had faced in Pakistan, resurfaced in the form of racism. And this book had so many layers to it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, I borrowed it, guys, and I borrowed it, the electronic copy, and I was reading it, and I have so many notes. But the other thing that I don't think I was thinking much about is because of her culture, the things that were going on inside her, and because of her culture, and then who she identified as. And I just want to say that I recommend reading this book for anyone who has ever experienced trauma and does not think they can get on the other side of that. So, Kyla, what were your thoughts about the book?
Oh man, I had a lot of thoughts. So, I mean, I loved it, and it really is a journey. And it's like a geographic journey, of course, as you've expressed, as she travels, first with her family, from Pakistan to Canada. And then, do you notice whenever I say Canada, I get super Canadian. It's like I can sound like I belong here until I start talking about Canada. But then also, that she travels sort of as an adult, traveling around the world. And so we have this incredible geographic adventure. But her experience transforming, and really through her transformation, her family transforms. I mean, that's one of the things that I found so compelling is the journey of her mom that we see through Samra's experience. And I just thought that was, there's a lot of power in this book. So I definitely think it's one of those things that I encourage everyone to read. It won the Canada Reads in 2020, which is a big yearly event that's done by CBC, and people defend the book choice, and a lot of the nation reads along with these different book choices. And so it's a big, well recognized book. I think the things that really stood out for me, like as I've said many times when we do these readings, I'm always trying to think, okay, what can I learn, and how can this book help me, do a better job, or like how does this impact me? And there was a couple things. I think this idea of creating the freedom to be herself, that she did not have the freedom to be herself in many spaces. And Michelle, as you highlighted, like going to Canada wasn't, perfection by any means, that those limitations, there's still these societal, familial and societal limitations, and that she created the space and created the freedom to be herself. And I was really impacted by, like on a personal level, by my own limitations in terms of like who am I, if I like what bravery does it take to be fully yourself? So she talks about an experience where she's publicly dating a man, and through her relationship with this man, she has other relationships with other people and women and other men, and but she talks about that it's kind of like I can't remember her exact language, but it was almost sort of like a blind, that it was okay to be with this, cisgendered man walking down the street, and she had this private life. But what happens when she brings her private life out into public, and this decision to be public facing was all parts of herself? And I was thinking that, to me, that is something that I think resonated very deeply about ways in which like my own identity can exist in safe spaces, and making a decision, or what would it be like to make a decision to be like, I'm going to step into a visibly less safe space. So I was really impacted by that particular part.
So the thing that stuck out with me is her religion was such a strict religion. And what I mean is the confines that women have to operate in, and how she struggled with that. There was a woman that she saw on a motorcycle early on, who was bald headed, and she was a little girl, and she rode off on this motorcycle, and she thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And then there's this is the electronic version. On page 28, it says, "So my mother came of age knowing abandonment and neglect intimately. Her experiences taught her that as a woman, fertility, purity, and beauty were the only currencies she could exchange for a better life. She understood that any hindrance to my ability to find a suitable husband made me as undesirable and disposable as her stuttering mother. She lived in a country where countless women are found dead in alleyways and on the sides of dirt roads, their bodies discarded because they were not able to conceive children, particularly boys." And to think that this is her mother's belief. There's some scene they're getting ready for one of the holidays, and her mother, there's this big deal about her hair, and how she would let the scarf just drape at a certain, fall a certain way, so that it would then bounce on the curls, so that she could accent her hair. And this is someone who's married, and there's a child who is struggling with who she is, and understanding that the woman that she saw, who was bald-headed and who was on this motorcycle and was the opposite of what is considered this beautiful woman, is what she saw as beauty. And I just can't imagine. I cannot imagine living with that struggle. How do you, and she wanted desperately, no matter what, she continued, and as most children do, continue to do what a child sees as best for their parents. Continue to act in that role. Even as she gets older, she continues to act in that role. Let me do what's pleasing to my mother, to my family. No regard for her own feelings. I mean, nobody even asked her when she learned she was leaving Pakistan. And the struggle that was all she knew. And, all of her friends are there, and that's hard enough for a child just changing schools, knowing that they're not going to see their friends again, is a struggle for a child. She's leaving to go to another country. And while you know that they have to leave for safety reasons, but that was never discussed. No counseling, no nothing to assure that she was going to be okay. And I think about the damage that happens to, or the trauma that happens to young people in general, when things much smaller than that go unaddressed. And all that happened to her, and she survived. She's just become a little shero for me. So
I was impacted also, and it gets towards the end, and I took some notes. So let me just because on page 169, and she's talking about, and I think this is such an important message, especially for those of us who do not practice Islam or come from different cultures, where she's saying, after all, Islam is not a monolithic religion. And the version of Islam we each practice was very much shaped by what also set us apart: geography, culture, race, class, and history. And on one hand, this is one of those things that when you read it, it's like, okay, that's odd. Like, I mean, yes, it's not shocking to read it, but yet to be reminded of that. And I think that is such a key thing. And it reminds me, in our joint programming together, we've done a couple different women in faith dialogue series. And that's so much of this messaging from these conversations we've had. And I see it reflected in the book, which is, I think, sometimes in the West, and I'm going to generalize, and so just forgive me, audience members, for generalizing, but I'm hoping that what I say will resonate, if not in yourself and maybe people that you know, where if people in the West maybe don't have, or people in the United, specifically people in the United States and Canada, don't have a lot of interaction with Muslims, they can not, have a lot of ignorance, actually, just because of lack of exposure. And so some of that ignorance can be this idea of this monolithic, or that to be Muslim is to be one thing. And one thing that the book takes us through her own journey and experience is finding space through the texts and through other people, where she exists inside, and that there is room for her inside her faith, which is not necessarily what she would have felt growing up. And again, so I think some people that are listening right now, or that, may also not understand how any faith, actually, it's not just Islam, that people may feel that way about Christianity. Like, whereas, if you have a very rigid understanding of these faiths, it may be difficult to imagine how big and beautiful they are, and how much room there is for different people to exist within them. And so I thought that was such an important message for people who are not Muslim, but also for people in any faith, just to be like, or without a spiritual practice, who maybe hunger for one, but think that there's no space for them, to realize that one can create the space for oneself. And that in so doing, you see that she discovers so many other people. She's got this photo project. Actually, Nick, if I can get you to put some links in the chat for people, she has this incredible photo project where she went around the world taking pictures of queer Muslims and telling stories. And so people saw themselves reflected sort of globally. And that's really, I think, led to a lot of her work. And we see a lot of this in the end of the memoir.
Yeah. So I wanted to just kind of stick with the trauma. And I think that was a release for her. Because, when she was going to Japan, and her mom wanted to know, are you traveling with a lover? The mom wants to know, who you're going with. And she ends up telling her mom. So it's, again, the internal struggle, of what's going on with her. And she said something like, I wouldn't dare tell her that I was going to Tokyo to be shown the queer life. And this is after she finds the queer Muslim community. And again, the internal struggle of trying to be or trying to live up to what's expected of you. And I'm glad she found an outlet. That's really, because I empathize with anyone who has that kind of, who suffers trauma, who has internal struggles, and they don't find an outlet, don't get counseling, don't write a memoir, and deal with that in an unhealthy way.
Yeah. Did you find, I'm going to ask you a personal question, and you can deflect. You can suddenly lose internet, whatever you like.
Nick,
giving you many outs, many outs. But as you read, so this is a story of a very particular circumstance. Did you find, as a reader, did you find yourself, did it resonate? Like, did you see pictures, images of yourself or similar experience reflected in this?
No, I didn't. But I think because I focused on all the stuff that she went through, you know, as the sexual abuse, the terrorists, the, you know, bringing in, hiding family members, and well, not family members, friends that her mom found on the street, people that they would not have necessarily associated with, bringing them into the home. And there's a scene where, I mean, I could visualize it. It really reminded me of when Jewish families had to hide. When she has the scene where her mom, you know, it's something's happening in the street. She doesn't really know what's happening in the street. There's noise. Clearly, there's an attack of some sort. She doesn't know. Her father's not home. Her mother's not home. She's in the house. And then her mother comes in, but she comes in with all of these people. So her mother's like gathering these. This is my vision. This is not what they say, but you know, her mother gathers these people, brings them into her home, and then the terrorists, you know, the Islamic terrorists start to look for the people that her mother has snatched off the street, and she and this woman just push something. It was something. I can't remember. Was it a chest or something? They put in front of the door. They're banging on the door, trying to get in because they know these people are in there, and they have to lay quiet on the floor. But then her mother, because it was, I think it was Samra's birthday.
It was for 7th birthday. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, her mother just proceeds to bring out the cake, and they're going to celebrate like nothing is happening. The father's not home. They're worried about the father getting home. Her, I think that the father called.
I think he just came through on the roof.
On the roof, yeah. They hear this noise on the roof, and you know, that's how he got in, because he couldn't safely travel through the streets. And then when the father says, you know, we've got to get out, and you know, just kind of say, and the better school that she had to go to, but then had to keep her identity. So she had to hide her religion while in school. She had to hide her religion in the streets where she lived. And this was a religion that existed for hundreds of years. But it was not safe to practice in the area that they were in. She had hid the sexual abuse. I mean, there was so much she was holding on to. She had to hide the fact that she didn't want to go to Canada. She had to hide that she was struggling when she got to Canada, that she then had to, well, my mother can't speak English, so guess I got to do this, and I got to do what's right for my family. She just, you know, it was just a lot for her to hold on to. And Miss Vivian is asking, how did she deal with her life? It was, I think she did in early on. I think she did what most people do. This is what I have to do to survive. This is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be a problem for anybody else. Everybody expects me to be strong. You know, this is my faith, so I have to accept it. This is what a woman is, so I have to accept it. This is what has to happen for my family, so I have to accept it. Yeah, I just think she did what she thought was best. That's rather than, and then, you know, do children know to ask for help?
I think she had to go back to Miss Vivian's question. I want to say she had a lot of bravery. And I think that was the thing that I felt all the way through, which was and she addresses at one point, like, what is it to imagine a different life for yourself? And I think she, as sort of as she relates to her mom at some point. And I think that, there's a bravery in even being able to have the imagination for a different life for yourself. Like that itself is a, creative and brave act. And then to act on that, to be able to say, I'm not going to stay married to this person, that, to create. I just keep getting this idea of like creating space.
Yes. Yeah. To have to marry. I mean, she had been betrothed to her cousin and didn't even know it.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. Yeah.
And that just takes, I felt that all the way through is the courage that she had all the way through, and that was manifested in different ways. And I think that's maybe to go back to Miss Vivian's questions, like maybe courage looks different at different times in life. And I think we see that here. And that's where I was asking you, do you see elements for your, in your own world? And, I just know that for me as a reader, there's so much about this that is beyond my experience. And I'm so grateful for the chance to have an opportunity to see through someone else's eyes through, which is what, wonderful. I think really so many of the books that we've read in our series has done this. It gives us opportunities to see through someone else's eyes and start to be able to imagine a different life than the one that we live. And so this does that. And I also saw those places about like, what does it mean, creating the space. And we talk about this, writing ourselves into existence. Sometimes, if we don't see ourselves reflected, or she's in this, she's taking pictures, she's, sort of photographing herself and others into existence. And now through this memoir has also written it. But I think when I look at it from, how did I feel as a reader? It was both that I'm getting this experience, a glimpse into someone else's experience, but I also see the ways in which in my own life, I have lacked courage or had courage, mostly not had courage, actually, if we're going to speak very openly and frankly here, going out on a high note, as I confessed a very, very small amount of courage in my own life. To find if the space isn't there for you, are you going to create it and build it and find it? Or are you going to shrink inside a life that doesn't quite fit you?
Well, now that you mention it, we'll talk about it that way. I think I am a fairly courageous person. I think that I too often say what's on my mind. But that doesn't mean sometimes when I speak up for me, that doesn't mean that I'm not struggling internally. And the times that I feel like I'm not courageous are those times that I talk about wearing a mask, showing up at work with my mask and letting people only see what is on the surface. But again, I think she is very courageous given the trauma. And I guess for me, not having walked in her shoes, I cannot see myself in that book. I can't. And I don't want to minimize her story by saying I can see me. Because my struggle was I don't see my struggle as being as traumatizing or as what I imagine her life like. And everybody should have a glimpse of another life. But I just can't imagine. I can't imagine having all of that. Starting at such a young age and having her say, but that was, I mean, leaving Pakistan was all she knew. With all that trauma, that was all she knew. And reading it, I would think, I would have been so glad to get away. And I've never felt like, I guess like her, I've never felt like I wanted a different life. And I'm very grateful for the life and the life experiences that I've had. And my life hasn't been, I've had a really good life. Had some, like all of us, I think you've had some bad things happen, but I don't think my bad things compare to what she went through. And, when you think of your places of dominance, so if you liken it to that, think of your places of dominance. If you're Christian, and I think this is what we've been talking about for the last couple years. When it comes to race and social justice and all of the issues that we've tackled, it comes down to where are your places of dominance. So for me, I am educated. I am Christian, and I'm heterosexual, and I'm American. So when you start listing your places of dominance, and knowing that there's power in your dominance, most of us could probably say that we're pretty powerful people. But when you start to think about her life, and I guess that's why I said I don't think mine compares. She is gay. She is from Pakistan. She speaks another language. She's not the dominant religion. There's so many things that she's up against that I wouldn't dare say that I could see myself there. I can't. I can only empathize and be grateful for where I am, knowing that I have fewer places of dominance than some. And I mean, certainly, being an African American, being female, because that's the other thing, she's female. So, yeah. I just look at everything that was the checks, what she could check off, and I could check off so much more. Yeah.
I was struck by, and this, I'm going to go back to another quote here where her brother is asking her some questions, and she explains, or sort of paraphrases them for us as readers, which is, why do I feel loyalty towards Islam when, as her brother sees it, Islam isn't always kind towards Muslims like me? And, that's some from later in the book, but it reminded me of the earlier quote that I shared too, which is like this, that Islam not being a monolithic religion. And as I'm reading this, I'm thinking about people who are, again, through their identity, alienated from, so in this country, maybe it's the dominant religion. I don't know that it still is, but we think of the dominant religion as being Christianity. I don't know if that's still true, or if the dominant religion is no faith. I would have to look that up. But I think it's certainly not another religion than Christianity here. And so how many people can't set foot in the door of a church because they feel like there is no space for them in the Christianity that they've been exposed to? And I think, she goes through this in terms of going to the mosque, like where, and we see her after having not been to one since she was 16, right? Since the marriage ceremony, she then, and I can't remember the length of time, but like 10 or 15 years later, comes to one in Toronto that is full of people that she felt comfortable around, and that she had so much in common with, despite or because of these differences that they also had. And, you know, this idea of, I think this is something that I just want to hold on to for myself, and I would hope other people can too, is just recognizing the multiple ways in which one can approach spirituality. And I'm not here to tell people that they must have that, but I know that there are people who feel alienated from the spiritual dimension of their lives because of a very limited exposure, judgmental, limited exposure that basically says you don't belong, right? Like, if you're not the right type of Christian or the right type of Muslim, you don't look right, you don't, you know, have sex right, frankly, let's just name it. You don't, you know, like these, and therefore you're unwelcome in this space. And what I love about her work, and we see it in this book, but we see it in her art and the writing that she's done for The Guardian in these various places, which is showing people globally that they have space. And they, like, not only did I feel like she did not only write herself and create herself into existence, but in so doing, she made space for so many other people, continues to make space for so many other people around the globe. Really, there is space for you here. And I think that is just a critically important work.
The Miss Vivian, I think, asked the question about how does she deal with things. I think there was something freeing about when she said she was queer, because she says in the book that in the past she had always said, I like girls and that I wanted to be with girls. But the fact that she said she was queer, it said she had spoken it without caring about any consequences. But then it goes on to talk about, well, what is it? You know, so the guy who's probing is, well, what does that mean? So, but there was something freeing for her about that. And, you know, I think that sometimes we don't look at our opportunities to free ourselves, or take the opportunities to free ourselves. You know, I think so many of us wear masks. I think so many of us stay in a box and hide who we are from the world, or aren't willing to share our thoughts, which means that we don't necessarily create space for ourselves to be who we are. And also sometimes when we do that, we're shutting others out. So we don't create space for them to get to know us, and know us as human beings. And so I that's what I was looking. I was reading this with, I think, a different perspective. It was just looking for those things that, you know, when was she safe? When was she safe? Yeah.
And where do you think that became?
I think it really was when, I'm going to say, when she found her community and she could be open and she could share who she was, and met people who would like her, who could introduce her to, they introduced her to her. That's
a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
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 I was struck, and I'm curious to know how this was for you. I kind of we touched on it earlier, but like about her and her mom, like recreating a relationship. Sort of years later, they'd had a break for a period of time, you know, a necessary break, and then she works to like build up that relationship. She talks about that, like this connection and like working to like nurture the relationship with her mom. And I feel like we saw mom be different. I mean, I feel like the whole family was transformed by decisions that the author made, you know, for her own life, that actually sort of like loosened something in the family or created different possibilities for the whole family is sort of like my takeaway. But I was looking at the relationship she had with her mom, and I was thinking, I was struck by her capacity. Actually, both her parents. I was struck by her capacity to be forgiving and to be open to her parents after those years. And I'm wondering how that was for you.
Well, so I was glad because I'm real family oriented, and I just think when you, and I know not everybody thinks this, but I think when you are family, you forgive. And that's family and extended family. And you recognize that nobody is perfect. And as parents, you make mistakes. Because one of something that my husband always says, when you know better, you do better. And I think that society sets your norms, and in some cases, your society is your church or your religious belief. They set your norms. So, I was glad she went home. She was ready to go home, and it is. I think there's nothing more important than family. And now, had she gone home, and it'd just been awful. You still have to have peace of mind, and some things you have to walk away from. You love people from afar, but I'm just glad that happened, because you got to, in order sometimes to let your mess go, you have to forgive. You have to forgive yourself, but you have to be willing to forgive others as well. Yeah, and her mom didn't know anything else.
Yeah. There was that part in there, I think, where she said something about just that, again, that capacity to imagine, like, what is the world? There's a book, a Pulitzer Prize winning book by Edward P. Jones called The Known World. And we don't have to unpack that entire book right now. But one of the things that with this idea of the known world is that whatever the known world is, that people can recreate the known world because it's just all that they know. And when you're outside of the known world, then you can look at it or critique it or do differently. But if that is all that you know, the recreation of the known world again and again. And I think that, as you talk about the mom and what we see the mom, especially when they're still in Pakistan, like what she is able to imagine for her children is inside the known world.
Yeah, I was actually looking for something. I can't find it. I don't know what page. Well, I can't find it. But in any case, anyway, I can't, and I'm not going to take up and create all this dead air. I am sure that Nick is having a fit. He's saying, they aren't talking. What are they doing? Anyway.
Can you paraphrase?
It was something that her mother said. It's after she goes back. I just remember it struck me. So I did a lot of this reading like in bed when I was sleepy. So I highlighted some things and then somehow go ahead a couple of pages and then have to retract. I don't know what it was. Is this it? Wait a minute. No, that wasn't it. That was something. So when this is something else that I found that struck me when she talked about she was wondering when she found Alex, and was that another way to hide? I can't find it. But anyway, this had, and that would Alex was another way to hide. I'm wondering if, we are, I think as human beings, we find ways to hide. And so here she was knowing exactly who she was, but then questioning herself, like, why am I doing this? Why is this relationship with Alex so important to me? And is it another way to hide? Because her parents liked Alex. So I wish I could find it. I can't find it. And I know it's around here somewhere, and I didn't highlight it. Anyway, so if you were going to recommend this book, who would you tell to read this?
Oh, I'm always terrible about this because I always say everybody. Okay. So I think, I would probably say the same thing, that I think that, not little kids. Okay. But, I think it's a wonderful way, and not necessarily easy, but rich. When I say wonderful, it is a rich way to enter into someone else's world, and in so doing, reach into many other people's worlds. And, looking for ways, and, this is kind of our theme again, is, what are ways that we have opportunities to learn about and from other people. And so here you have a book that's written by a woman originally from Pakistan who moves to Canada as a young person, what it's like to be an immigrant to Canada, a Muslim immigrant to Canada, a queer Muslim person in Canada, but in the world, she goes to multiple different places. And what is it like to be in those spaces? She has this wonderful part where she talks about North Carolina, and, that I think is so worth exploring too, like how she found being in different spaces. So when I think about who should read it, I really do think, it's good for all of us, I think, to be curious about identities and people's experiences. And if what we've just described doesn't sound like an experience you've had, then I certainly think it's worth reading to get an idea of someone else's experiences. And if it is an experience you've had, if you resonate with one of those identities or those experiences sound like something that may touch you, that I also recommend it because it's so important to be seen and to see yourself. And I really did question as I read it, like, and I think going back to the bravery piece and this idea of creating space, and what does it look like to create space for oneself and to be that kind of courageous aspect, where it did have me looking at my own way of walking through the world in terms of like the courage question. And, I would hope that I'm not alone in that, that other people might have the same opportunity to question how they float through the world, and if there was something they would like to adjust or not.
So there was also and I found this, they're at the wedding, and one of the things that she says is she's talking about the exchanging of the vows, and she says, what if I were to renew my vows to myself and ask guests to share what our friendship means to them? Did I need the occasion of marriage to feel validated by those I love, or to celebrate love itself? So do we take opportunities to validate love for ourselves? Do we take opportunities to validate the love that we have for our friends and our family? And if we don't, are we taking it for granted?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think at that moment she realizes, she said, well, it says in the next paragraph, I started to think about the incredible lasting friendships I've made over the years. And maybe my friends, my chosen family, could be the loves of my life. After all, chosen families are cornerstone of queer culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think chosen families are a cornerstone for most people. So, there's that old adage, you can't choose your blood family,
Right.
but you can choose your friends. And you do have, in my case, I have some friends that could not be any closer than family to me.
Right.
I'm an only child. My girlfriends are my sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And, but this makes me think, have I told them how much I love them
Mm-hmm.
and what they mean to me?
Yeah.
And shouldn't we take some kind of vows for friendship?
I think it's a good one. And I think this idea of telling people how much they mean to us or how we value them. And that is something that I try to do. I will say that I sometimes think it makes people uncomfortable because I you're like, ugh. But I also think, well, if I get hit by a truck tomorrow, I should have told you because, so I maybe go a little too far on that, but I'll just full confession. I have a lot of anxiety. So I really do think I'm like, okay, I'm going to die tomorrow. So I have to tell everybody everything I think right now. So if you're one of those people, hopefully you can have some compassion towards me. But I do think it's so important. Like if people, I have been so, God, my life has been transformed by the love of other people. Like I can't even express the warmth and friendship that I have received, far beyond anything I ever deserved. And that has just, transforms my life sort of on the daily. And so for these, and I can think of some women that just lift me up, and to give them that. And I love this idea that you've just said, like, should we have vows for friendship or a ceremony where our people come together to celebrate that love the same way we do for, romantic or marital love.
Right.
I think that would be pretty incredible. Wow. And it's worth it, when you think about the richness, you talk about your friend group, the richness of that friend group that it has given to you throughout your life, right?
Yeah. And I have some guys that I'm just really, really close with. And my husband knows, these are my buddies here. And and I don't know of many women who have a lot of male friends, especially once they're married, but I do. And those guys are my brothers. And we treat each other that way.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever told the guys just how much they mean to me.
Yeah.
I think you do it through your acts of kindness. But like you, I think it's important to say on occasion. And it is especially important when you are not in I'm going to say a place of dominance, and your circle is small. Just to let people know how much you value their love, their friendship, and their commitment to the friendship, because that's important too. Because there's friends and there's friends. Yeah. As I have a couple of girlfriends, and they're my ride or dies, no matter what.
It is, and I mean, I think I'm so glad we're talking about this because I see that in the, I think I asked you earlier, like, you'd mentioned this sort of change or transformation. I said, when do you think that happened? And you mentioned, like when she sort of found her people. I don't think those are your exact words, but it is just that group that lifts you up and brings you in, and like, you're good enough, you matter and you belong here. And that messaging is so critical for all of us. It really, Well, let me ask you. Let me turn the question to you. Who would you recommend this to? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would recommend this to, like you said, just about anybody. Because there's so many little nuggets in here. I just found this one where she says, a quote by her dad was, "Leave young people in a better state than you found them in." And it says the advice had been passed on by her father, who it was a friend who told her. That's what it was. And how many times do you think about, am I leaving this person, either in your personal life, your work life, just the people you meet on the street? Are you leaving them better than you found them? Mm-hmm. And I think, I get emotional when you meet someone. I think that's our role. We should leave them better than we found them. Mm-hmm. Whether that's, you smiled at them, or you offered them to come to have soup, or whatever that may be. In all of the books that we've read, I think it comes down to, let's make sure whatever we've learned through this season, that we're leaving people better than we found them. And I think this book would do that for anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a good one.
It was. It really was. It really was.
I was thinking as Nick was giving us our introduction today that, it's been 2 years, buddy. Like, we've been doing this. And I actually feel a little choked up. I was feeling a little choked up before we started, actually, just thinking.
Me too,
yeah. Okay. Okay, everyone, Michelle and I are going to have a moment. But I really just felt a lot of love for our experience together that we've been doing, and realizing, oh my gosh, it's been 2 full years, and that's been so incredible. And it's been scary at times, I think, because we're going to, really try to do a good job with what we're reading and sharing and what we're experiencing. And it's been really awesome to be able to do this with you. It really has been. And like go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was
going to say, I miss Vivian and Susan. We've got a lot of people who tune in regularly. And
Miss Myers. I wasn't. Miss Myers spoke earlier, and I wasn't able, because for whatever reason, I can't comment. I can only view. So, Miss Myers, I was not ignoring you, but thank you, Miss Myers, for tuning in. Miss Vivian, you're right. We have so many people who are faithful to us, clamoring on.
And my dad tunes in. My dad's here. Hi, Dad. So I am 47. I'm about to turn 48 years old, and I'm so fortunate because my dad tunes into our chats every month, and it's like really awesome. It's like, talk about love, right? Like, I feel like we get to have this experience doing this conversation. It's been very meaningful to me.
Yeah, it has for me as well. And I think we've read some challenging books, and one of the books that we read, Kyla, is a book in my class. So I thought, I don't have to read that. Blind Spot.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So,
that one? Yeah, that one. Yep.
All right. Okay. Well, I will say, we are at that time. So,
that was my fast.
I know, it's been so awesome. And so we are taking a little break now. We're not doing anything for November and December. So we're closing out for our Elephant We Don't See Diversity Dialogue for 2021. Another year has come to a close, but it has been so amazing. And, thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Nick, in the background there. But Nick has been, talk about the ride or die. Nick has been so awesome and has come in and pitch hit a couple of different times for us, and just been a wonderful partner. And for, of course, all of you who have been just fantastic to join us and think with us and grow with us. It's been really, really awesome.
It's been amazing. And let's not forget O and Nestor, who've stepped in and filled in for Nick.
One thing that's really cool to share with, and thank you both for everything tonight and the whole series, but one of the cool things for our audience to hear is that this good work that's been happening on this series and throughout the work of the library and the Office of Human Rights, we're taking it on the road, believe it or not, and we have been for a while. And we're meeting with different colleagues in the library field at different conferences, actually sharing this as a best practice of how a civil rights agency can partner with a public library to create spaces where personal transformation can happen regularly in a way that's non-confrontational, in a way that is supportive of our own journeys with needing to be more aware of our biases and such. So, there are a lot of other examples of this work happening out there, but we've been very fortunate to have opportunities come up where we're able to share this work. And, I think this is one of the shining examples of Prince George's County as a community coming together and leading the way in part of a greater national and global effort to affect some positive change. Now, we can't put numbers on that per se. We can't say these dialogues are ending or minimizing racism or anything, but we know that with the people that have been touched by Kyla and Michelle, and also just the fact that all of us in the room are touched regularly by this process, that it is having some kind of positive impact, and it's putting good energy out into this unending fight, unfortunately. So unfortunate that it's an unending fight, but it is the reality of it. So from my side, thank you both. This has been wonderful. I don't know what we're going to do with I don't know. It's like we have to get together for Thanksgiving, talk about a book. But we do have a lot of great things coming up that where you can see Kyla and me and others from the library and Renee from Office of Human Rights. Tomorrow night, we have the unmarked film screening and discussion with Chris Haley, which is part of our Freedom Stories project. And we'll be starting our countywide read programming on Tuesday, November 2nd at 7 p.m. We're having monthly book discussions to talk about that book there, A Question of Freedom, which is by William G. Thomas and explores the history of the enslaved Black people who lived in this county, not by their own will, of course, but they actually went to the courts and started challenging slavery as early as the 1790s, which is mind-boggling. And that is a great example of this county. Just no matter what challenges that people are facing in this community, that we stand up and we fight for what's right, even if it takes a great personal toll. So stick with us. We're doing a year-long read of that book, so you can take it in bite sizes, because it is a nonfiction history book written by an academic who's a genius. So we're taking it slow. We're reading the prologue in chapter 1 for November 2nd. You can borrow the book online, and next week you'll be able to start to pick up a free copy at your local branch library of the book to keep in hardcover, which is pretty cool. So stay tuned to that. We have
one for me, Nick.
Oh, I've got one. Don't worry. Don't worry. And many more events coming up. Visit our website, pgcmls.info/events, and OHR's website, which is
tinyurl.com/PGCOHR events.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. Enjoy dinner. Say hi to Gary and to everyone.
Okay. Thanks for the quote, Gary. Yeah.
And come back for Finn on Thursday.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to do a little Finn plug?
You can do it.
Okay, so I have a child. I have 2 children, but one of my children named Finley is, in a way completely unrelated from me, is going to be a special guest with the library Thursday at 4:00, talking about how, as I understand, how she learned about human trafficking and has done some work around human trafficking awareness, or helping bring in some of my colleagues with the Office of Human Rights to talk about human trafficking awareness. So Prince George's County Memorial Library System has invited her to speak. So Thursday at 4:00, you can see Finley and teen voices about human trafficking.
Cool. Thank you for the plug. Thanks, Michelle and Kyla. We'll see you back in whatever is next.
Okay.
Oh.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Kyla, we'll talk.
Yeah. All right.